Hi everyone, happy Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. And how ironic as I start reading chapter 5 of this book that Nurse Turley just drove by my house and honked, so I went out and waved to her, and she of course made me stop and stay far enough away from her to keep everyone healthy, and she hopes all of you are staying healthy too. So I'm going to read Magic Treehouse number 21, Civil War on Sunday by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 5, Angel of the Battlefield. Jack still didn't remember who Clara Barton was. He pulled out the Civil War book and read. Clara Barton was a famous Civil War nurse. When she began nursing, she used her own money for her supplies. She drove a horse-drawn ambulance right into the battlefield to help save wounded soldiers. For this reason, she became known as Angel of the Battlefield. Jack put the book away. Then he hurried to Annie. He looked at the woman sitting in the driver's seat of the wagon. She doesn't look like an angel, Jack thought. The woman was very small. She had a plain, serious face and dark hair pulled back in a bun. She wore a long black skirt and a black jacket. In the back of her wagon were more wounded soldiers in torn uniforms. They moaned or cried out. Nurses, both men and women, were putting the wounded men on stretchers. Clara Barton wiped her forehead. She looked hot and tired. "Can we help you, Miss Barton?" Annie asked. "Who are you?" asked Clara Barton. "Jack and Annie," said Annie. "We're volunteer nurses. What can we do, Miss Barton?" Clara Barton just smiled. "Well, first of all, you can call me Clara," she said. "Second, would you ride with me back toward the battlefield? There are more wounded waiting to be picked up." "Sure," said Annie. Jack didn't answer. After seeing all the men in the wagon, he was afraid of getting closer to the battlefield. "And you?" Clara asked Jack, her dark eyes looking serious right into his. Jack didn't want to admit that he was afraid. "Sure, no problem," he said. "Very good," said Clara Barton. "Let's go." Jack and Annie climbed up into the driver's seat next to her. By now, all the soldiers had been taken out of the wagon. "Take care of my new family members," Clara called to the nurses. She snapped the reins, and the horse-drawn ambulance rode off, sending up clouds of dust. That was a short chapter. Chapter 6 is called Keep Low. The wagon jerked and swayed as it bumped over the dry ground. Jack felt as though he was frying in the hot sunlight. Dust from the road filled his throat and his eyes. The boom of cannons grew louder and louder. Jack heard popping sounds too, almost like the noise a firecracker might make. "What's that popping sound?" he shouted, blinded by the dust and sunlight. "It's musket fire," said Clara. Jack remembered that muskets were long, old-fashioned guns. "What are those flashes?" asked Annie. Jack tried to open his eyes and see what she was talking about. He saw bright flashes of light in the distance and puffs of smoke in the sky. "Well, that's cannonballs exploding," said Clara Barton. "Shells are like small bombs. They have ruined much farmland." Jack squinted at the passing countryside. The ground was filled with ugly holes. Long ditches were also cut through the fields. "Did the shells make those ditches too?" he asked. "No, those trenches the soldiers dug for a battle," Clara said. "Each side digs their own. Day after day they sit in the trenches, firing their muskets at one another." Jack tried to imagine how terrible it would be just to sit in a trench all day long, waiting to be fired at by someone else. "We have to get some water," said Clara. She drove the wagon to a narrow creek. A stream of water flowed downhill, running over rocks. The wagon came to a halt. Jack heard a whistling sound, then another. "Keep low," cried Clara. "What's that?" Jack asked. "Cannon fire," she said. Jack and Annie crouched down into the driver's seat. Jack felt a rush of panic. He pulled out his list. His hands were shaking as he read, "Be brave." "Oh, great," he thought. Another cannon shell whizzed overhead, then another. The ground exploded over and over in flashes of light. Dirt clods flew everywhere. Clouds of smoke and more dust filled the air. The horses neighed and whinnied. Be brave, thought Jack. Be brave. As many of our nurses and doctors now have to be brave. That's the end of chapter 6. So chapter 5 and chapter 6 were probably our shortest ones that we've had for a while. Chapter 7 will be called Helping Hands. Please tune back tomorrow as I read chapter 7 and chapter 8. Hope all is well. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.